We're in an obesity epidemic, but why? What's going on? Well, if I was to pick a random obese person in the UK, I could make some pretty accurate predictions about that person. Number one, they don't have a local Waitrose, but they do have a local takeaway. Number two, they don't have the disposable income to shop at Waitrose, even if they did. Number three, they can't afford an £80 a month gym membership. Number four, they don't have a lot of safe spaces to exercise. Number five, they don't have a flexible work schedule that allows them to exercise during daylight. And number six, they do have childhood trauma. How do I know all of this? Well, because the data shows that situation is a much better predictor of obesity than character. So we tend to think of obesity as something that it's the result of a person's choices, of what kind of person they are. But it turns out the research consistently shows that what predicts whether someone will be obese or not is what situation they are born into or find themselves in. It's more accurate than the individual choices. So how come? What is it about the situation that's causing the obesity epidemic? Well, we might think about what we call the food environment. So I've talked before about this idea of food deserts. You might just not have a supermarket that sells fresh fruit and veg. We might also think about portion sizes and how if you do go to a restaurant, they tend to give you very large portions. Unless you go to a really fancy, expensive restaurant, then you get a massive plate and a tiny bit of food. We might think about exercise environment. So we might think about lack of green space. We might think about the amount of pollution in the local area and how good it is to exercise. We might think about things like shift working or fixed working hours compared to someone who works from home on a laptop and can just go out for a run on their lunch. We might think about economic constraints. Fresh food is expensive. So if we think about the cost of the financial cost per kilocalorie, it's much more efficient to just get a load of frozen food, to get a load of junk food, than it is to eat healthy fruit and vegetables. We might also think about the economic cost of gyms. If you've got a lot of money, you can go to a fancy gym. There probably is a fancy gym in your local area. That's much more difficult when things are financially tight. And if you don't live in an area where there is a safe outside space to exercise and you can't afford the gym, where are you supposed to exercise? We might also think about time constraints. Ultra-processed food keeps longer. If you don't have a job or have a flexible job, you can go down and buy the fresh bread every day. But if you are working long hours, if you have a long commute, you've got to use public transport, you probably don't have the time to pop down to your local Waitrose constantly and replace all of that. So you have to buy ultra-processed food. It's less healthy, but it keeps longer and so fits within the available time that you have. Then we might also want to think about mental health issues. We know that people in the most deprived areas have more mental health issues to deal with, and this can cause stress eating, trauma can impact the way we eat, and also a lot of medications such as antipsychotics or antidepressants can lead to weight gain as well. Now you'll notice that I haven't said choice here. We all have choice, but that choice happens within a context, and people often find themselves in a context that makes certain choices almost inevitable, as we've discussed so far. I can tell you from personal experience that willpower alone is rarely enough. So if you see my other channel on triathlon, you might know I'm a 6-time IRONMAN triathlete. I have literally starved myself down to race weight. And I can tell you doing that is one of the most hardest things I've ever done, because it's so difficult to ignore hunger pains when you feel hungry. I'm a highly motivated triathlete with a doctorate in psychology, and I barely managed it. So although it's a bit patronizing to say, well, most people are just not going to have this, It's just an unreasonable expectation to say people should have all this willpower to make these decisions, when even if you have an entire psychological toolkit and great motivation, it's so difficult to do. But let's look at an example of when people are able to successfully change their eating patterns. And the example I would like to look at is Ramadan. Now, every year, 1 billion people stop eating during daylight hours. So why does this work? Why can people do it here? Well, because it's a community-driven thing. Everyone is in it together. And this is often the opposite of what we do in society. Typically in Western society right now, we try fat shaming. We tell people that it's all their fault. It's their fault by themselves. They just need to stop eating so much cake and then they would be fine. It's pathologizing people's eating. It's stigmatizing people's bodies. It's all unhelpful. That's the opposite of what's happening in Ramadan, where everyone says, we're all in it together. We're all going to stop eating during daylight, and then we're all going to share a meal at sunset. Now, the key thing there is that this is a social thing. It's a social change, right? Because if we think about how we solve the obesity epidemic, what's going on and what do we do about it, is the question I opened this video is. Well, the answer is that people become obese for structural reasons. It's because of the situations they're put in, rather than a failing of willpower, rather than a failing of character. But we absolutely can fix it. But we need to shift our mindset from this idea that fat shaming, which doesn't work and all of the research shows doesn't work, into starting to build a society that leads people to better choices. Because as we've seen, if we together help people make those better choices, we can succeed. When we isolate each other, it is unhelpful. But when we come together and build a society where the structural barriers are not in the way, we can start addressing the obesity epidemic.